If you would like to just put into your chat box where you're from and your name, that would be great. Okay. So I'm going to hand it off to Andrew Palmer, who's going to start the meeting for us. Welcome, everyone. My name's Catherine Daw, and I've been one of the members of the design team. So over to you, Andrew.
There we go. Thanks, Catherine. So before we begin this event on sustainability and how we can better take care of our planet and people, I would like to first acknowledge that we have assembled on lands that have been occupied for over 8,000 years. We are gathered on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe Nation, Petun, and later the traditional territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation and members of the Three Fires Confederacy, which includes the Ottawa, Potawatomi, and Ojibwe. The Huron-Wendat and Haudenosaunee nations have also walked this territory over time. These First Peoples are the past, present, and future caretakers of this land. Across Turtle Island, there is a resurgence and revitalization of Indigenous nations who are calling upon settlers to honor the treaties, to recognize their right to self-determination, and to stop the ongoing oppression and marginalization of Indigenous communities. I would now like to invite you all to take a moment to pause and reflect on the land you are standing or sitting on and the peoples who have stewarded this land over millennia. In this moment of pause, ask yourself, do I know the history of this land and its people? Who currently benefits from this land and who does not? And what actions have led to this imbalance? Miigwech. So on behalf of the Institute, I would now like to welcome everyone who is joining us for this 5th event in our Sustainable Speaker Series titled Envisioning a Low Carbon Future. So for those who are not familiar with the Institute, we're essentially a community organization whose vision is to harness the power of people in place in South Georgian Bay to grow social and economic prosperity, as well as be the most innovative, greenest, healthiest, and most caring region in all of Ontario. Pretty lofty goal, but one that we are hoping to achieve in small part through the knowledge sharing of events like this and by supporting related actions that arise thereafter. We also have a broad design team that plans and organizes all of these events and includes a number of members, including Julie Scarcella, Catherine Dow, and myself as co-chairs, Marilyn Struthers and Victoria Evans as facilitators, and then finally, Michelle Baker, Yvonne Hamlin, Rosalind Morrison, and June Porter as other essential key members of our design team. We've all greatly enjoyed the process of organizing all of these events for you, and we also hope that you enjoy your time with us here. So this event is hosted within a broader 7-part speaker series that began in February of this year, with discussions ranging from exploring the inherent need for sustainable approaches to future community development. We also engaged with mayors and CAOs across the local Southern Georgian Bay municipalities on collaborative regional approaches to addressing climate change. And then finally, we also discussed the economic impacts and incentives related to implementing all of the approaches previously discussed. So for those who missed some or all of these earlier events, I really would encourage you to visit the Institute's website, which can be found in the chat below. And there you can find video recordings of each event that you can watch on your own time. In October, the next event will focus on the really pressing issue right now of affordable housing and sustainable approaches to address, while the final November event will focus on connecting innovative towns and districts. So organizing these events takes a lot of work, and it really wouldn't be possible without the support and collaboration of a number of local partners. So the lead partners that we have as a part of our team include the Institute, the municipality of Meaford, the town of Blue Mountains, the town of Collingwood, municipality of Grey Highlands, and the town of Wasaga Beach. And then the supporting key partners that we have include the Center for Business, Julia White from the Cooperators, and then Greenland Consulting Engineers. So the United Nations, they developed their own kind of framework or index of sustainable development goals. And these include 17 integrated goals that are set forth to broadly achieve sustainable development worldwide. The focus of This whole kind of speaker series over the past year has been goal number 11, which focuses on sustainable cities and communities, and it's our primary focus. And it really just aims to essentially make human settlements safe, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable. These goals were put forth by the UN in 2015 from their General Assembly, and essentially the goal is to have a global adoption of these by 2030, which is really coming up fast. So needless to say, time is of the essence to implement here in the region. And then finally, we would like to draw your attention to the second Collingwood World Summit that will be held virtually on October 7th and 8th. And this event will also focus on SDG 11. Registration for this will begin in September, so stay tuned for updates from the Experience Collingwood website as they become available. And I will now pass the baton on to Julia Scarcello, who will introduce the event and our inspiring presenter, Tova Davidson.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Andrew. Before I start, I'd like to give a hands off or a shout out to an appreciation to Adam Thackeray for his work on the Institute and his dedication as co-chair on the design team. He was a great teammate, so he will be missed. Today's agenda. We will have one speaker presenting for 15 to 20 minutes, Tova. We will have a moderator and participant questions following the presentation for about 15-20 minutes. And we'll be taking questions from the floor. You can put your question directly into the chat. And it'll be, the format of that is to ask a question and get an answer. Our goals for today. Tova Davidson will be sharing the Sustainable Waterloo Region story and how it could be applied here in South Georgian Bay, and how we're going to be inspired by Tova's presentation. We really are going to explore what we want to hear from this is the what and the how point of view, and consider what could work here and how can we act on it. So the next part, just bear with me here. I just have to share my screen. Going to move us out of the way. There we go. We've been very busy regionally, as you can see. An inspiring note, really, of some of the amazing environmental initiatives that have been underway in the region. So we've got a lot in play. Excuse me. Communities are starting to get organized. From grassroots initiatives to climate emergencies, official plan policies underway to support growth management, sustainable development, and attainable housing. We also have a community carbon footprint challenge underway, pilot projects in consideration, and of course the SDGs. Collingwood SDG number 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities, and its efforts through the UN support program is also underway. We also have 5 or 6 municipalities that have declared a climate crisis emergency. The time is now. 2030 and 2050 are fast approaching. We are starting to see very clear evidence of change, and with those challenges comes mitigation and adaptation, and we will need to consider doing both. Throughout the series, we have heard a regional approach and the need for collaboration. Today, we hope to inspire you and for you to help us, join us to take action. About Tova. Tova Davidson is the Executive Director of Sustainable Waterloo Region. She will share her story, its journeys, its ambitious vision of supporting an environmentally and economically resilient community. Tova was selected by the Guelph Mercury for the top 40 under 40 and its recipient of the Mayor's Award of Excellence. Tova leads the Sustainable Waterloo Region under a board of directors by developing their strategic direction, supporting team members, building key relationships, and I think she's got quite an army of volunteers. She brings her experience in public relations and communications to creatively approach sustainability opportunities. Paired with her business background, she's primed to collaborate with top organizations in the Waterloo region to drive change locally and provincially. She will discuss the evolution and the success of sustainable Waterloo. I'd like to introduce Tove Davidson. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. It's
Yeah.
nice. They're always so formal. You could have been like, she's a little kooky, and we're looking forward to it. That'd be fine too. So welcome, everybody. I'm Tova. It's really great to be here. There's a couple of familiar people in the call today. So nice to see you, David. I hope Julia is here too. I am going to share with you the story of Sustainable Waterloo Region. I'm going to give you a really quick, like, here's what's going on in the environment. And then I'm going to talk about what do we do as an organization? How do we do it? What are the areas we work in, and sort of what's the impact of those? So going to be really fast in these because 15 to 17 minutes is not a lot of time, and I just started a timer. So let's do this. Okay. Tell me when you can see that. Is it good? Awesome. Okay, I'm just going to start with my own land acknowledgement. I am representing Waterloo Region right now. We are on the Haldeman Tract. That is land that was promised to the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Neutral people. It's either side of the Grand River. And this land is still being cared for and stewarded by these people. And the work that Sustainable Waterloo Region does is in line with a lot of what these people believe and the philosophies. And we're really honored to be able to braid together some of their learnings and to be able to work with some of their philosophies, like the dish with one spoon and the ways that we work together in 7-generation thinking. So thank you for doing the land acknowledgement, Andrew, and wanted to represent for our side too. So Sustainable Waterloo Region, really fast, is a social enterprise not-for-profit. We work with organizational and community level sustainability, but we work like a business. So we're not a charity, we have no core funding. We are almost like a chamber of commerce and a fee-for-service organization, but all in ways that we're working towards helping organizations be more sustainable, both financially and economically, and in the last 2 years or so, tying in the other sides of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, ways we can be socially sustainable too, because we know that, like the 17th UN goal says, you can't solve one issue without solving all of them. So tying all of those together. Okay. I'm going to start with some of the bad news and then we'll get into the good stuff. So the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, you'll hear people call it the IPCC, this is from the UN, says that we now have 9 years to cut global emissions 50%, or we will face irrevocable climate disaster. So that's a lot. That's a lot of work to do. 45%. The science is now saying 50%. And so it's a real focus for what we're doing. And I'll talk about that a little more in Waterloo Region in a second. And Canada thinks that we don't have to worry so much, but in fact, we are warming at twice the rate of the rest of the world. This is a hot, dry summer already. We are down a third of the rainfall we should have. Climate change is here and it's impacting us now, and it impacts things like workers and food production, et cetera. So this is something we really do need to focus on. Canada also, most people don't know this, has the highest per capita emissions of the G20. And in fact, we're 3 times the average. So just, I'm going to pause. I know I'm a fast talker, but I want to pause here. Remember, we think of ourselves as having an environmental halo. We think it's clean, we're green. We are the worst emitters in the developed world per person. Okay, just let that sink in. And I'm going to just keep going on that thread for a second. This was June 1st this year. Our emissions have increased the most in the G7 since the Paris Accord happened. So it's not that we used to be bad and we're better now. We're continuing to get worse. And we can talk about later if you want in the questions why I think Canada is so bad. And finally, Canada is the only G7 nation that is still emitting well above our 1990 levels. We're the only one that's actually increased our emissions. So you can see the US is back down to the 1990 levels. We're still up. So let's remember, as the privileged, one of the most privileged, one of the most affluent and wealthy people in the world, this is our responsibility, and there is a lot that we can do. And climate justice, like I said, is human justice. The emissions that happen here do affect us here, but they more greatly affect those who are less privileged. And so this is not just about the bugs and the bunnies in the trees. Some people expect me to be really focused on that, and it's true, it is, but even more, it's about the people. And when you hear about groups like Extinction Rebellion, they're not talking extinction of the animals, they're talking about human extinction. So climate justice is human justice. This is just a baseline fact I want to share because a lot of people want to talk about reducing energy and they think about electricity. This is the carbon emissions equivalent from energy in Ontario. See that little tiny line right here? That's electricity. The carbon emissions from electricity are small. The carbon emissions from natural gas and gasoline are 10 times that of electricity. So when you think about where do you need to change, what things do we need to change in our systems, it's natural gas and gasoline use shifting over to electricity or alternative fuels. So keep this in mind when you're dreaming big later on. Okay, into Waterloo Region. This is from our most recent year report. I encourage you to go to our website. This is in the footer. You can look at the whole report. But these are some of the stats of our impacts over the years. And I'm going to dig into a few of these. That number at the top, 22 tons, that's the number of GHGs per Canadian. But 100% of the municipalities in Waterloo Region, and there are 8, participate with us in both climate corporate and climate community level actions. We do a lot of social media. This is the 42,000 number here. And we do have a cool army of volunteers. In fact, our volunteers give about $316,000 worth of value to our organization every year. For example, our finance manager, volunteer, HR manager, volunteer. Really cool way to leverage and move forward. This guy right here, this is Mike Morris. For those who've ever heard of Mike, he's also a Green Party candidate now in Kitchener Centre for the federal Green Party. He's the founder of Sustainable Waterloo Region. And he started this whole thing because he actually read a book called Ishmael. And it was a conversation between a man and a gorilla. And in that conversation, the gorilla said to the man, "You are the only species on earth that doesn't obey the laws of nature. And you're hurting everybody by doing it." And then the Kyoto Protocol collapsed. And Mike thought, you know what, we can do something local and there can be benefit to our local economy and our local community by doing those local actions. And Mike then went on and we helped incubate another not-for-profit that Mike led called Green Economy Canada, which then scales the program that Mike created. And I'll tell you a bit about that program and how it's changed over time. And just as a foundation, before I start to get into our programs, everything Sustainable Waterloo Region does, without fail and without exception, has 3 key components. First, it always includes measurement. Organizations, communities, businesses, anything, even people, manage what they have numbers for, what they measure. And what they measure, they will work on. If you don't measure something, it means it doesn't matter to you. So measurement is the first. Second is we do nothing in isolation. Everything is in partnership or includes a network building because we know changing community only happens in collaboration together. Nothing, no real change happens in complete isolation. So there's always partners in everything that we do, and you'll see that as I go through. The last is that we build everything to scale. We work, anything we develop, we intend to share. And so the organization that Mike left Sustainable Waterloo Region to run was called Green Economy Canada, and it was to scale one of our programs. So this is Mike. The program he started at the very beginning, and the thing that most people, when they think of us, that they say they're members of Sustainable Waterloo Region, is now called the Regional Sustainability Initiative. It used to be called the Regional Carbon Initiative. It helps organizations to measure where their material impact is in their operations, their own operations. And it can be greenhouse gases, waste, or water, because the 3 are so intrinsically linked. And then we give them the tools to measure that materiality, give them the coaching, the best practices, the resources, professional development, et cetera, to actually set targets, public targets, to tell everybody how they're doing, what their footprint is, and then work towards reaching those targets. And we celebrate the work that they do. This program now works with 85 companies. It's about 20% of the workforce in Waterloo Region. And this is a self-sustaining program. So all those organizations pay a fee to us to be able to access those services and all of that expertise. There are reasons that businesses do this. And there is always a return on investment. Businesses and organizations will not keep change going if they don't see value, if it doesn't give them something back. The main 5 things, and this isn't just that we found, but it certainly has proven within our membership. The main places that there are organizations that get a return on that investment is through first reduced operating costs. That one's obvious. You use less energy, you change your system, you change your building, you use less energy, saves you some money. Great. The second is risk management. And risk management can be from risk of your sector. Other people are doing this. You're worried what your suppliers are going to need. Are you being monitored by your sector. Or it can be governmental risk. If you think about requirements coming down that you have to report something, you have to be within a certain cap of your water use, etc. Finally, and this is a good one, I think, is carbon price. When we talk about carbon, a ton of carbon going up to $170 a ton, that's risk management. You want to lower that number down so you don't have to pay that $170. The third is green branding. And green branding is to be able to say that you actually are reducing your impact and being a responsible corporate citizen, not just saying I sponsor someone and getting a logo. And that's where the measurement becomes so important. We can actually prove whether they are or are not moving forward. The fourth is employee retention and attraction. And this is huge in Waterloo Region. We're a tech hub, we're an innovation capital of Canada, and recruiting employees is tough here. And employees want to work where there is a values alignment with their own values. So this is a big one, attracting and retaining your employees. And finally, increased innovation. In order to do some of these sustainability actions, you have to think differently. And encouraging people in your organization to think differently about something that matters to them, like sustainability, means they become more innovative in their work anyway. So there's some real values to the businesses to doing this work. This is Green Economy Canada. I told you a little bit about the scaling and that vision that everything we do scales. So when we innovate, we share those innovations to Green Economy Canada, and Green Economy Canada goes and shares it with other municipalities and other not-for-profits across Ontario and now scaling across Canada. TravelWise is the next program. It's a transportation management association, and we do this one in partnership with the region of Waterloo. It gives employers resources to give their employees. It's like an EAP program, but for transportation. So discounted transit passes, carpool matching software, trip planning, employee engagement, and even better, we have an emergency ride home reimbursement program. So if you carpool with someone and then your kid gets sick, you can take a Lyft or an Uber or a cab or whatever the options are in your community. They send us the receipt and we pay them back. And the interesting piece to share with you on that one, most people think, oh my goodness, that must be expensive. We work with about 50 organizations in this one, and we maybe get 5 claims a year from the total of all of their employees. It's not actually a problem, but everyone thinks it is. So just to put their minds at ease. Why would an organization want to be part of a TMA? Well, they get reduced parking costs. Parking's expensive. Building a parking spot is expensive. Reduced parking spots and demand, increased employee satisfaction and retention. Studies have shown that employees who get to work using active transportation or public transportation are actually happier employees. It also helps you attract those employees because those employees, sorry, there's my son, those employees are more connected to their community and they're feeling more supported by their corporate leadership. And then there's positive corporate exposure as well. So it's being seen as a leader and an innovator and being responsible to your employees and your community. And as I said, healthier, happier, and more productive employees. Climate action is a big one that I think would be really big here. And we do this in partnership with Reap Green Solutions, as well as all 8 of our area municipalities. So 7 lower tier and 1 regional municipality. This is our community climate action strategy and target. And we have an 80% target, which is by 2050 to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions based on a 2010 baseline year. We are right now, like I did 3 of them on Monday, going to councils. And when I wrote these slides, 4 had endorsed and 4 were ready to go. Now 7 have endorsed, including a 50% by 2030 target. Say hi to everybody, Caius.
Hi, Caius.
Okay, 50% by 2030. And we are working towards how do we implement this? So we work in partnership with all of the municipalities, and REAP is our partner in as much as they do residential as we do corporate. And then we partner with other community-minded organizations to implement this. So Cycle WR and the school transportation planning and the chambers of commerce and all of that kind of thing. This is a unique model in Canada because the community climate action plan everywhere else is owned by the municipality, but in Waterloo Region it's owned by the NGOs because this is the community's plan. Charge WR is our program that looks at how do we encourage the adoption of electric vehicle technology. So not just the vehicles, but the charging infrastructure as well. And originally we had a target to have 1,000 electric vehicles in Waterloo Region by 2020. Well, you can see we almost tripled that. And so we're at 2,700 and a little, 2,741 registered in Waterloo Region. We do this by doing things, working with the Waterloo Region EV Owners Association and the car manufacturers and the municipalities. We also, this little thing over here with the charging stations, here we actually have over 200 publicly available charging stations as well. So it's the infrastructure as well as the vehicles themselves. Okay, Evolve, I've already sort of alluded to Evolve. Evolve is Canada's very first net positive multi-tenant office building. David Hearn, who I saw is on the call, worked with us on this project. The idea came from Sustainable Waterloo Region's strategic plan, and then we reached out to the community to say, who wants to work on this with us? And David's company, EY, actually came along as a partner to have the voice of the tenant in the room. We also worked with the developer who did build this building entirely in their own budget without a dollar of government spending, because the business case is good enough to do that. And we also worked with the R&T Park, which is the David Johnson Research and Tech Park, which is part of the North Campus, the University of Waterloo. And together we made this building a reality. And this slide is groundbreaking. I don't know if everyone understands how important this is. Almost never does a developer tell you what the energy efficiency of its building is. They'll say it's LEED, they'll say it's efficient. They won't tell you. This building uses about 800,000 kilowatt hours of electricity each year. It doesn't have any natural gas to it. In fact, it's generating 106 and 112% of the energy that it needs. So it's actually net positive. And if you own or operate a building, that means, think about this, there's zero energy costs to run this building. It's 110,000 square feet. Absolutely incredible. The things that they've done here are amazing. In this building on the ground floor, I'm almost out of time, so I'm going to get even faster. On the ground floor, we run a group called the Evolve Green, and these are the two universities and the Accelerator Center. And together we are working to build the future of sustainability within the region. So the universities look at both technical, how do you get there, and culture. How do you change culture? How do you change minds? How do you get people to understand that we are sustainability creatures and that this is important to who we are? And the Accelerator Center actually opened an incubator for clean tech in this building. And we have a shared office where we work together to do this kind of work. So this is the thing I want to use these last 2 minutes. They asked me to tell you, what are the 5 lessons learned? This is big for me, and I'm going to just maybe slow just a smidge. The first is to hold tight to your vision. We have something we call our hedgehog. What is the thing we are best at in the world and that we focus on and we protect vehemently? And you have to decide what that vision is and hold tight to it. The second is that we measure what matters. That's what I talked about at the beginning. Measure what matters to you and then manage what you have measurement on. The third is that partnership is essential. If we didn't work with people to do all these things, we wouldn't have the social capital to do some of the big things we're now working on. And so that's really critical. Partnerships are everything. And it means that you can call the people who have the power and influence and say, can we just talk about this idea? What do you think? And they're open to talking to you. Really important. Intersectionality is the reality. There is no longer a world where you're going to solve climate change and not think about sustainable and accessible housing, or you're not going to think about indigeneity, or you're not going to think about how do we have a just community. Intersectionality is the reality. We have to move forward with that. And lastly, to the thing that you're going to think about now, be bold, because big things are possible. When I started talking to people about the Evolve 1 building, they thought I was nuts. They're like, well, you dream big, but it's never going to happen. And it only took us 4 years, which in the development world is really fast. And it proves that big things are possible. That's it. 18 minutes and 12 seconds. Happy to answer any questions. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Tova, that was awesome. That was really great. You are a fast speaker. No wonder you love it so much. It was perfect. Okay, so my name's Catherine Daw, and I'm going to be moderating the Q&A before we go into the breakouts. And I know we have a smaller audience than we might have anticipated, so I'm really hoping that most of you will stick around for the breakout. We've got some great facilitators, and we really want to have you participate in as much as possible in this. So we've heard quite a bit from Tova on the story and how they started and their programs and what they've been able to achieve. And she did leave us with those 5 lessons for us to consider. So we've set this up so that I will be asking a few questions, but we're also going to encourage you to put in the chat your questions. And this is going to be a ask a question, get an answer, so that we can try to get through as many questions as possible. Julie and Andrew will be monitoring the chat, and I will come back to them to let you to see what they've got in terms of questions that are coming up. If you were called on to ask your question, please unmute yourself, ask your question, mute yourself, and then we'll have Tova provide an answer. This is a little bit different than what we've been doing, where we've been asking the questions on behalf of people, but we're going to try and open it up and make it a little bit more personal. So Tova, let's open up with a little bit more. I'm really interested in the fact that you're a social enterprise and a not-for-profit. Would you explain your funding model a little bit more in depth and how it works? Where does the money actually come from, and how does that all work?
Sure. So we've got a bunch of different sources of revenue. As I said, in the Regional Sustainability Initiative, it's kind of like a chamber where member companies or organizations pay us a fee to be part of the program. We also supplement that with some sponsorship. As a nonprofit, it's not a charity, so it's not donations. It's more like a marketing piece. So when we run events, we recognize them, that kind of thing. So that's that program. Travel-wise and climate action are run on behalf of the municipalities. So the municipalities pay us to run those programs, and they see the value in that we are more closely linked to the community than they are. We can do things that regional staff can't, and we have really deep expertise. It allows them to do more and to engage with the community that way. And sometimes we don't have the same kind of overhead that a big organization would have. So there sometimes can be some cost savings. Charge WR is actually entirely volunteer run. We don't have any staff that run that one. So that one's an easy one to fund. And the Evolve project right now is funded through the research being done in this space. I didn't talk about this. We're working with the research institute called Veris out of Wilfrid Laurier University, and they are focusing on how do you build a culture of sustainability in a space like that, and how do we engage the employees to get them to think about it in that way, so that you don't have to fight the fight for every little thing you want to do, because they already feel that we are a sustainability community, and therefore, of course, we're not going to, throw things out in the wrong place, or it's going to be reasonable that we have, the air conditioning a little bit warmer, or whatever those things are. So there's a bunch of different ways. And when we are doing really innovative things, we sometimes get some funding to support our work to do the innovations. So when we're trying to launch something new, but it's always launched in a way that we aim for it to be self-sustaining in the long run.
So in a way, it's a fee for service, and that you're not chasing after grant money, and you're using municipal dollars in a very effective way for the programs that you're doing for them, and likewise for the businesses. That's awesome. Yeah. So, and you've mentioned that you use a lot of staff and a lot of volunteers, like you showed that number of $316,000 worth equivalent of value from your volunteers. And I know that it's a small staff and a large contingent of volunteers. It's incredible how much you've been able to achieve based on that model. Could you tell us a little bit more about the partnering model? Because you've explained that you do partner, and how it's a key element of getting things done.
So the big lesson in partnering is that you have to leave your ego at the door. Everything we do in partnership. So we always have community consultation. In fact, when I was doing my strategic plan, there was community consultation on what should SWR's focus be? Where does the community think we need to go? And even when we're working on individual programs, for example, in Regional Sustainability Initiative, we're about to launch a total waste target option as opposed to just a waste diversion option. But we went out to members and experts in the community and say, okay, tell us more, tell us why we should do this, what are the pitfalls, how do we do it? Help us launch it, help us talk about it. So it really is that we've built over time that idea of we are partners in this. And I like to say to people, because some people kind of get their back up when they're going to talk to an environmentalist, they think I'm going to hang a banner or something. And rather I say we are entirely a support organization. We are here to help. I have given my personal cell number to like everybody. I've had mayors sitting at the UN texting me, can you tell me the number on this? Because I want to say this on the floor. And I'm texting right back, you bet, here you go. Entirely support. So if we see things starting to go off the rails, it's a private conversation about how can we help, what's going on, what are the barriers, as opposed to like, shame on you, you shouldn't do that. And that changes the conversation entirely when they know you're on their side, you're just working to make this community better together.
That's great. Julie, what's going on in the chat? Have you got anybody that's got a question that they would like to ask from the floor?
I do. Got a couple here, so just bear with me. Sorry, where did David's question go?
Is that David Orling or another David?
Hang on here. It was here. Just I went too far down. Sorry. Bear with me, everybody.
I can jump in quick, Julie,
Yeah,
if you want.
sure. Andrew, why don't you do that while Julie's looking for
I
that
just-
question?
Oh, it was sorry. From David Hearn.
Yep.
Could you ask that question that you posted in the chat?
This is overall just kind of a hierarchy kind of question that from the Ernst & Young EY world, Tova was extremely instrumental with what we want to do as a firm for our sustainability program going forward. And I think the one thing that feared us and it fears a lot of people is you don't know what you don't know. So Tova was able to, with her team, bring us into kind of a focus of reality with the Evolve building that we're part of. And we've never looked back. It's just been a great experience with her, with the the developer. I think it's a great opportunity for us to look at what we're doing. And I think looking at what EY is trying to do in our global sustainability program being neutral, this was leading edge. I think Tova was what, 2-3 years ago that we were asking you, what should we do? And you're saying, this is what you got to do. And our leadership team at the time was going, holy crap, this is different.
So that's
and I
great,
think
David.
the one thing that you mentioned, or you didn't mention, is that outside of the power, is that new Evolve is also geothermal heating for the building too.
Yeah, there's a unique geo exchange in that building. And I put the link to the feasibility study in the chat. So, you know, one of the things, as I said, to scale, you can actually go in and see exactly how that building was built, what's in there. And so there is a geo exchange, and then there's the solar panels, which are very cool, covers the parking lot, et cetera. You know, it's funny, David, when you talked about that, one of the things we've heard from the developer is that we are constantly asking, not just in that project, but everywhere, why? So when EY comes to us and says, we need to do more, and I say, we need to do this, and they say, well, we don't think, if you were to say, we don't think we can do it, you would say, well, why? Why can't you do that? What are your barriers? And sometimes it gets annoying, as we heard from the developer, like we'd say, well, why do we have to do that process? And they say, well, that's how you develop a building.
Well, don't
why
put
do we do that?
So, sorry, I'm going to have to cut it because we want to make sure we get as many questions in. Thanks, David, for your question. Andrew, what have you got coming up for you?
Yeah, so one of the recent questions that just came up, how much does the presence of the two universities in Waterloo influence the success of Sustainable Waterloo region? And how might other areas move ahead without those local partners and potentially like the student energy and student interest that can provide support as well?
It's a great question, and certainly I think the universities changed the ethos of who Waterloo region is as a whole, thinking about ourselves as a tech and innovation capital, that sort of thing. So that certainly is there. In some ways, it's a challenge for us, to be honest, because we get a lot of volunteers who want to volunteer. And because we're a co-op based university at the University of Waterloo, they're here for 4 months and then gone. So you just get a volunteer going and you think a role is going well and then they leave, or co-op students coming and going all the time and getting them up to speed can be a challenge. But the university certainly does affect the region as a whole in how we do that. But it's important to remember Waterloo region is also the 3 cities, Cambridge, Kitchener, Waterloo, and 4 townships. So we have rural, I have 4 rural townships that I work with. And then Cambridge is significantly different than Kitchener and Waterloo. Cambridge is quite blue collar, a lot of manufacturing. So it's quite different too. So there is an element to it, but it's not everything that drives it, certainly.
Okay, Julie, do you have a question?
Yes. Lee, could you, so Lee's question is, Tova, could you talk a little bit more about the threats to the hedgehog?
So the threats, this is a typical not-for-profit answer. The threats to the hedgehog are also that there's money to do something else. And we're always running short of money because we always want to do more. And so you think, oh, if only we could just do that thing because we could get some money and it would help us do, you know, with overhead, and we could probably do it. And then you veer away from your hedgehog and then things never go quite as well and you lose, there's some sort of creep scope and mission bleed and all of those kinds of things. The other threat is that if you focus too narrowly on too small of a hedgehog, you then don't have the capacity to build that social capital. And so when you create something like a hedgehog, and this came from the good to great. So if people are looking like, where did this hedgehog and the virtuous flywheel and those kinds of things, it came from the good to great, Jim Collins. When you build that, you have to build it for something that isn't going to change. So this is what we want to be. So for us, we want to be the very best at organizational and community sustainability innovation in Canada. That's what we do. And that's where we want to be the very best. And so climate change organizations, how do we do that?
Great, that's a great answer. So I'll just ask one of my questions, because you did touch on it. It sounds like you've really spent a lot of time building strong trust and equity in the community. How did you create that culture shift, given the complexity of the issues, the urgency, and divergent views? Because that's the biggest challenge, is much of that, right?
Yeah, and you know, that culture shift is ongoing. It'll never stop. We're gonna be working on that culture shifting for, well, I hope not forever, because I hope we solve climate change and I'll work myself right out of a job. The idea is that because we have over time, like we started out saying, look, we want to do this. Do you want to be a member of this one program? And then they saw how we operate in that program. And then we just asked them to come forward and to be listening. You know, I've seen a lot of memes that say people listen to respond, not listen to understand, really listening to what they're saying, really understanding their point of view, and not coming to any conversation with a predetermined or a judgment mindset. The other thing is that we firmly believe in abandoning the scarcity mindset. We believe that that a rising tide floats all boats. So some organizations, some not-for-profits see it as pie. There's only so much pie, and I need to get the biggest piece. And I don't see it that way. I see it as, you know, the more we move forward, the more people focus on this, the better the groundswell is, the more people who are involved. So the more we do and the more we partner, the faster people's minds start to shift, because the fear starts to fall away. And I've been in conversations in the last, well, right before COVID, with climate deniers and trying to practice that, because we need to change their minds too. We need to get them to understand, and that everybody needs to be on this. You know, we talk to energy companies. We talk to, like, for those in the environmental world, you'll know that animal agriculture is a huge impact. We partner with them too. Let's move everybody forward, because it really has to be an inclusive thing. We call it the castle with many doors.
Lovely. Okay, so one last question from the audience. And I think, Andrew, I'm just going to ask you if there's someone that you would like to have ask a question.
Yeah,
Pamela had a question too.
Well, okay, I'm gonna take from Andrew first, Julie, and then if we have time, we'll do that one.
Okay.
Yeah, I was actually going to go to Pamela Spence as well. So
Okay.
Pamela, maybe it's a good question. So if you want to unmute, maybe you can ask Tova directly.
Thanks very much. Great speech, great inspiration. My question is, for we smaller municipalities that don't have the universities, don't have the breadth of expertise, where would you suggest we start with an innovative program or measure to inspire the community to sign on board and to get the most response? Thank you.
Yeah, so great question. And my thing would be, you need to determine where you want to make that impact and what resources you have in place already to move you forward. So do you want to start really big and think, what is our community goal going to be? How are we going to change the community? And then think about the pieces. Or do you have some really strong foundational pieces you could use as a lodestone to build on top of? So we started in corporate, and there already was Reap Green Solutions in residential. And then we were able to come together to do community. So I think really you need to look at where your strengths are and where the greatest area of need is. And there are tools that are accessible to businesses. For example, Energy Star has something called Portfolio Manager that you can go in and put in your energy numbers, and it'll tell you whether your building is sustainable or not, and how it measures, like Energy Star does. And there's also, you know, Federation of Canadian Municipalities has Partners for Climate Protection. So you could be looking at that. That's how climate action follows its milestones to work in the same kind of time framework. But I think the big thing really is looking for where your strengths are and then building on those.
Okay, great. Well, I'm sure that we could go on and on. I have a ton of questions I'd love to ask too. But we're going to have to move on to our next section, and I know Tova's going to hang around to the end of the event. So if we can squeeze anything in at the end, we'll do the best we can. So Tova, thank you so much for your presentation. The answers to the questions are invaluable and a lot of information and experiences that is going to provoke us to try to think out of the box. That's the art of the possible, and how can we make it happen? So we're going to transition now to our breakout rooms. And what that means is this is your chance to participate. And we're going to have facilitators. You're going to go into small rooms. I'm hoping not too many of you will drop off, because it's a chance for you to think about this. Victoria's getting us ready. So I'm just going to get you in the headspace for this small group work. So our commitment to you, the participants and the community, is to take the work we're doing here today and hold a follow-up meeting in early September. This will be specifically on this topic of how do we make something like this happen here. So with that in mind, we're going to send you into the breakout rooms with a key question and 3 supporting questions. So the key question that I'm going to ask is that if we were 10 times bolder, what would we be doing? And I'm going to say that this is a chance for you to think big, out of the box, be open to brainstorming. Absolutely nothing is off the table. There are no barriers to our thinking. If we can imagine that we're looking at 2050 and beyond, what would we be doing now in order for us to be that bold group of people, that bold community? The facilitators will get you there with some additional supporting questions. I'll just say them right now so that you have them in your head. Of what you heard from Tova, what is the most important idea or concept we could apply right now? What would it look like, and how could we get started here with a concept like Sustainable Waterloo Region? So again, if we were 10 times bolder, what would be doing is the major frame. And I'm just going to check in with Victoria. Are we ready to go, Victoria? Okay, so may the force be with you, and off you go to your breakout rooms. Thank you. Got a few stragglers. Okay, so hopefully these folks will go where they're supposed to go.
So I just saw another name that I know pop up, Nick Clowett. Okay. Do you guys know who Nick Clowett is?
No.
He's a former volunteer of ours. He may well still be volunteering. I can't always keep all of them straight. He is working on a sustainability plan for the Blue Mountains, the town of Blue Mountains. And okay. He's great. He's so great.
So just for a second, Victoria, do you want to ask Deb, or just park Deb into a room, and then I'm sure you're working on these other 2 people that are sitting here trying to figure out where they can go, right?
Yeah.
Okay, there's one gone, so that's good. I think that's very exciting, because I was understanding from Julie, because Julie lives in town of Blue Mountains. I actually pay my taxes in the town of Blue Mountains, but I'm right on the boundary between town of Blue Mountains and Collingwood. So I have become more attached to Collingwood as a destination. It's closer to me and all the other stuff that goes along with that. But she said that they've hired a couple of people to help with stuff there, which is good.
That's cool. Well, and I was just, as you were doing your sort of wrap up and go into the rooms, I was just scrolling through like, who's here? Do I know it? And I saw his name. I'm like, Nick Clowett. And I mean, Nicholas Clowett is not the most Cloet. It's not the most common name. So I'm like, it has to be my, as I think of him, my Nick Clowett. So sent him a message going, what are you doing here? Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, Catherine. I have sent Stuart a message. I'm not sure if
he may have dropped. He may have either dropped off or he's just wandered away from his computer. That happens. And I'm hoping that people are staying with their videos on when they go into the breakouts. I should have reminded them of that, because it's annoying when people stay mute, blacked out, right? You don't even know if they're there or not. Anyway, I can hear Brian downstairs, so they're talking.
Unfortunately, Andrew now only has 1 person in his room because some people dropped out, but that's all right.
That's okay. He'll have a good conversation.
Yeah.
I should have reminded them to Can you do a broadcast message to the rooms and remind them to make sure they're recording their session just in case?
Sure.
I'm
So that
taking
will
notes.
go, that will go
That-
to all participants. Is
It
that
would,
okay?
yeah, that's fine. Because there's no other way you can broadcast to the facilitators. So Tova, I guess the question is because we're going to do this follow-up meeting, and we have a social finance group that's been doing a lot of investigation on how to do social financing, and part of the group wants to be focused on procurement, and part of the group wants to be focused on, like, I'm on the social enterprise, let's get some social enterprises going. Do you have a preference either way, or does that matter to you?
So, I mean, procurement to me it's interesting, and I think advising. I assume you mean municipal procurement.
Municipal, yes, mainly. And
Yeah.
we're getting pushback from the municipalities. Oh, we have these rules we have to follow, blah, 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 right?
Right. So it's partly, actually, I was in a meeting today where we were talking about municipal procurement and what are the bylaws of those municipalities. And I know there are things that they have to follow. They also have their own bylaws. And so it might be the staff saying, well, council has to pass a new bylaw. So, and the bylaw may say they have to take the lowest bidder. My thinking is I would be more likely going to like create an NGO, get something started, because if you're just going to put everything into the municipal basket, you're just going to run into the will of both the elected officials as well as the staff over and over again. And one of the, to your question, when we were in the bigger session about like, how do you get this kind of culture change happening? It's because they've seen us do good things. They've seen that change can happen. They then trust us when we say, can we talk about procurement? Like I get to go into all the conversations about the regional official plan, and you don't just get there automatically. You do it because over time they've seen that we're here to help and that we understand the constraints and that we want to work with them and within their frameworks. And so that's what I would do.
Yeah, I think that's right. And there was a really good question that that Barry had asked, that if we who I know, and he's with sustainability, Grey Bruce Sustainability Network, and he said, how much do you think provincial and federal political status, conservatives/liberals, influences the potential success of a social enterprise sustainability initiative? Does that?
I think, a lot of, when I think about the other groups that Green Economy Canada works to help support them getting going, they often have to find, say, Trillium funding to get started, that kind of stuff. But Sustainable Water of the Region, the way we did it was we went to 10 organizations and said, would you be willing to give us $10,000 to get off the ground? So then we had $100,000 to get started. And, for an organization, like if you had an EY or whatever your big employers are, if they have any statement of sustainability, $10,000 as a sponsorship is not actually a huge amount of money. And I think one of the municipalities or two of the municipalities were on the list of the 10. We had some businesses, we might've had the university, but you could probably even go smaller than that. You could say, 10 who would give $5,000.
Yep. Yeah, because the problem up here is, like, honestly, the large employers are few and far between. Yeah. So one would be the Blue Mountain Resort, obviously, and they have a sustainability policy. In fact, one of the guys that's on is a recent retired. He was the director of energy management there. So they've done a lot of work. If you've ever seen any of their videos on the stuff they've done around, reducing all of their energy use and stuff like that, and where they're sourcing their water and how they're managing their water for making soap and stuff is interesting. And then there's Pilkington's, which is a glass manufacturer for, windshields for cars and stuff like that. They do that. Right. And then there's another glass manufacturer, but all the rest are, and even then the staff is maybe about 30 or 40, 50 people. It's not huge. But, I think we could probably at least start by going to the municipalities who are all currently trying to hire climate specialists and not moving, not very fast,
So we have 4 smaller municipalities, right? 4 sort of rural municipalities. And one of the things we're working on right now, because they have all now unanimously approved the plan to get us to 80 by 50. And they are all part of our, and they are all part of our regional sustainability initiative. So their own corporate target setting. So they've all committed to doing that publicly. And they don't even know how to have a sustainability person because they don't even have the expertise to manage the person.
Right.
So one of the things we're talking about with them, and this could be actually a way to help you, is, oh, it says my internet connection is unstable. Are my back? Okay.
Yeah, you're fine. Maybe take your video off.
Yeah. One of the things that it said that we're doing is we're working with them to potentially hire a single FTE, a single full-time equivalent that works for Sustainable Waterloo Region, but whose job is to be the sustainability manager for the 4 townships.
Okay.
So they only have to pay a quarter of an FTE, but we could hire someone of a higher value and then we manage them because we have the expertise to manage them. And then as they build the capacity within the township, that role, they could spin off and hire their own as they're ready to do that.
Oh, that's an interesting way of doing it. Well, we're recording this, so I want to pull the stuff out and use it. Because I mean, that's the challenge. It's a big challenge, right?
Yeah, and it really is like looking at who does this support? Who does it give value to? Economic development is a big one. I mean, heck, when you think about an area like yours, so much tourism coming in, and you think how much sustainability is in the focus of people right now. To be, I've talked to some people in sort of the Bracebridge, Gravenhurst kind of area, and in terms of, local tourism, they would be competitors. And I'm like, why would you not try to be more sustainable and therefore communicate that wider into the province to attract people to come there?
Right. Yeah. Sustainable is big. But the other thing that's going on is that there is a new accelerator that's just going to be started here, or it's just launching through the economic development strategy, because people realize that we can't just live off of tourism. It's just creating too much of a divide between the haves and the haves not.
Yeah.
And it's creating challenges around housing and all sorts of other stuff, right?
Oh, I can imagine the housing there would be crazy. Like certain housing, if I'm right, certain housing would be unbelievably expensive. And then other areas would be so not like tourist houses. Yep. And then to your point, the has and the have nots. And yeah, that's got to be a challenge.
In a service, mainly services where they're getting paid, minimum wage or, barely kind of thing. So it's just not something that people can live off of for very long.
Right.
For sure. So that's part of the challenge as well. Victoria, I'm just checking in with you. How are we doing time-wise?
Yeah, we've got 5 minutes left. So at 4 minutes, I can do the broadcast warning.
Okay. All right. And so that is going to bring us back at approximately what time? Because we're to be back by 5:40.
Yeah,
So
we'll be a bit early. So we'll be about 5:35.
Yeah, which is probably fine.
Yeah.
Then I could maybe ask.
Go overtime.
Well, maybe if we have a little bit of time, I'll just ask you one more question.
Sure.
If that's okay with
Well, and
you.
it might be that there's something that comes up in the conversations, like a trend in the conversations.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll save it to the end.
So
And if there's a trend,
happy to.
Yeah, if there's a trend that we hear between the two of us, maybe we can, because I'm just going to ask, like we did facilitators before, and they came back with their 3 big ideas, and then they ranted for so long that we ran out of time. So that was why it's like one sentence, one main
Yeah,
theme,
you never,
one big
those
idea.
report backs can be
Yeah. Oh, did we lose you there? Did we just lose Tova?
fast.
Oh, she's still there.
She's still there. Okay. All right. Well, we'll see if she's lost. Okay.
Okay, I just sent out the 4-minute warning.
Okay. Tova may have died. Oh, there she is.
No,
Yay,
I'm here.
there's Tova. Phew. Thank heavens.
Yeah.
I didn't go anywhere.
Well, when Brian and I are on the same internet and we live out in the country, it's like really challenging.
Well, and I've got my 20-year-old son and his girlfriend live upstairs, and my 14-year-old son is downstairs. And if he's streaming something or playing something, and of course, normally I'd be like, get out and go play with your friends, but it's COVID. He can't do that.
Yeah, for sure. I get it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think what we'll do is we'll we'll take you up on if you hear something. I'm gonna say, so what did you hear in the ideas and the themes that you might want to comment on? And that would be a good finish off on that for sure.
Yeah,
Time flies.
Time flies. I can't believe that there were 3 people here who I've worked with. Like Julia White's organization used to be a member of the
that's what she said. She said that in the chat. I saw that in the chat.
And then Nick is a volunteer and worked for the region of Waterloo doing the inventory for climate action. And David Hearn was one of our contacts in working with the tenants in the Evolve One building. Like, this is not like it is a small community and a very big one because we are everywhere.
So I guess we're going to have to hire you to come back and help us with all of this, right?
I love this kind of stuff. I'm actually talking about potentially, there's a researcher at the University of Waterloo who's doing some research in how do you get organizations to have that transformational moment to going to like really deep sustainability. And she and I sort of talk about like, could we do this? But I would happy to come back and do another talk or be in a conversation anytime.
Yeah.
Oh, this is fun.
Generous. Yeah. Well, maybe we'll have you back for September because we're going to have to figure out how we're going to use all this data, right?
Yeah.
And corral it. I mean, we've launched our carbon footprint challenge. We're doing it with the green team from the town of Collingwood to pilot it to start. And we're using the project neutral calculator and some workshops and stuff like that. And then we're going to try and see how many people we can get to do it in the community.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to, because Nick Clowett, his role with us was called the Living Documents Coordinator. So he worked on some of the things like our best practices and our idea book, like the things that businesses had done to reduce their impact. And as I said, he was one of the people who was most instrumental in doing the community carbon footprint calculations, the numbers.
Yeah, wow, that's interesting.
If he's still working in your region at that point, it might be cool for he and I to have, because I'm more like strategy, vision, where do we need to go, building connections, building networks. But then there's people who are so good at like, what do you do with the numbers? What are the numbers saying? Yeah. He's quiet, but he is smart like a whip.
No, that's good. Yeah.
All right, I'm hitting the 30-second warning, okay?
So sometimes those people that are really quiet are the ones that have got the best capability and all sorts of stuff, right?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. The person who's sort of my right hand at SWR, she like runs the finances and the HR and that kind of stuff. She did a skills assessment once and it said that she was really good at finding holes in things, and it's the best thing ever, and also like so frustrating sometimes. Yeah, she's really good.
That's funny. Okay, here they come.
Yep. Hi, Julia.
Okay, great. Well, welcome back, everyone. So while you're all getting settled back as a full group and the facilitators are madly writing their notes and coming up with what they're going to say, a couple of things. I've had a great conversation with Tova. I got a chance to ask her a few extra questions that we recorded. So they will definitely be in the recording. And she's also going to listen in on what the facilitators say, and then she's going to make a comment or pick something from what they generate as the report back and just give us a quick comment back. So the other thing I'd like you to do is to take a moment and put in the chat, what is your one big idea from the conversation in your group that you would like to share, and just put it in the chat, because we record the chat as well. And we use that material, and we will be using that material as we move forward. And as I said to you, my big promise back to you is that we will be holding a meeting sometime in early September to come back with material from this for us to continue the conversation. And Tova has even generously offered to come back and maybe help us with that as well. So that would be absolutely awesome if she could do that with us. So I'm just going to, while you're putting some stuff into the chat, I'm going to start with room 1. Who was the facilitator for room 1? If you would unmute yourself and give us your one sentence, one big theme, or one big idea. And that was who? Julie?
Is it me?
Were you room 1?
I'm number one. Look at that. Okay.
Okay. Well,
Number
you're
one.
muted, so I'm going to assume you were room one.
Okay, I'll be quick. Amazing feedback, amazing comments. We need to make it regional, make it happen. We've got to get on the same page and have a common vision.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Oh, that's
Sorry.
it? Just one?
Yeah, I'm just sorry. It's just one. Remember. Okay,
all right.
room two. I think that's
Okay.
Brian.
Am I room two? I thought it was room three, but anyway, I forgot. I meant to write it down. So I'm room two. Almost the same theme. It was kind of resulting in all businesses getting involved in organizations, amalgamating municipalities, resulting in eventually a cultural shift where we've got collaboration between everybody. You're mute. You're on mute.
Thank you. I'm going to just maybe call on room 2 or 3. Who's room 2? Did I miss? Okay, you guys probably don't remember what rooms you were in. All right, I will just call out on facilitators. So Fred, how about you?
Hi, I'm room number 5. I knew
Okay.
where I was. So great, really great discussion. So one of the big themes was we need to make a case for investment and return on whatever we're doing. And also in Collingwood right now, there's a lot of discussion about the water plant. And it's a really great opportunity as we move to improve that, to look at how we make that really efficient.
Okay, thank you. All right, Dave, did you end up facilitating?
Absolutely. And Shirley and Pamela and Yvonne and Spirit were fantastic. And our sentence is, our region is an interconnected rural and urban community where quality of life is the focus. Our infrastructure is net positive. Our town centers are built for the people, and food security, affordable housing, and environmental services are provided for all. A utopia, so to speak. I was probably like number 2, but I needed time to kind of connect all those words together.
That's great. And you know what, like, that's awesome. Thank you very much. Mary Jo.
Okay, we had a good discussion. Our theme, basically, we don't live in isolation. What happens on the waterfront affects everyone, including like the Beaver Valley. What happens in the Beaver Valley affects us. We need to develop a communal transportation system that gets people everywhere so we can get cars off the road. Thank you. That's great. Roz, I see you madly writing. Unmute yourself.
We had a great conversation. Dave Hearn shared with us that Ernst & Young EY is going to be carbon negative globally by June, like inspirational. And Rachel Hannon is a Mohawk graduate who's just moved here. So we've got the next generation already lined up to help us. And the one line is, we need to build a community network and holistic view, work together and use resources collectively across the region.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Roz. Sandy.
Sure. We had a lot of talk. It started off with talking about how our planning processes work. There's an awful lot of development going on. We know that the need to develop sustainably and affordably when it comes to housing is also a really pressing issue in the region. And so if that can be invited, encouraged by the planning process changes, that would be a step in the right direction.
Okay, thank you. That's great. Andrew.
Yeah, so the main big point that we discussed is that certain municipalities are in the process of developing their official plans right now. So this can be a great opportunity to engage the community, engage the residents, local businesses, and pivot on many of the current directions that our society and kind of our infrastructure and development are currently going towards. So that's the big issue that we saw.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Lee.
Thank you. Well, in the future, we will elect leaders based on their creativity and vision. We will stop teaching old economics theory and emphasize donut economics, and we'll reach out to agriculture and business in a supportive way as important partners in this area.
Thank you, Lee. That's fabulous. Bruce, last but not least, I think.
That's appropriate because when I went into the breakout room, it said we were room number 1.
Oh. Okay.
Anyway,
who knew?
We need to establish a vision that touches people, and we need to harness the natural beauty of this area that brought us here.
Great. Okay. I think I've covered all the facilitators. Did I miss anybody of the facilitators? If I have, just unmute yourself now, but I was doing a quick check off as I went. Okay, great. So Tova, what did you hear?
You know,
what do you want to share?
Yeah, happy to share. It's actually kind of cool. When I was listening, it was reminding me of some of the process we did in creating our climate action strategy. So I just want to give you a bit of depth in there. When we were trying to even set the community climate target, we actually went out to the community and asked them if they could envision our community in 2050, what would it look like if we reached our goals of climate resilience. And we had them put a dot on this big board of like, we would be here. So are we going to reduce by 0% or to 100% anywhere along the spectrum? And something like 75% of the community thought we should be 70% reduced or more. So it was good. And when I say we went out to the community, I don't mean we went and talked to the green people. We talked to over 2,000 people. I personally, and if you know me, you'll know how unusual this is. I went to a rodeo. I went to a Mopar event. Like we went to hockey games. We went everywhere in the community to ask the community really what did they see. What came back to us actually, it almost brought me to tears, and it floored me because the community understood that a low carbon future doesn't just mean we will emit less GHGs. The vision that came back to us was that it would be, and this is the phrase we now use in climate action, an equitable, prosperous, resilient, low carbon community. And when you think about what do those words mean, the equitable, prosperous, resilient, low carbon, it's a lot of what you were just talking about. Return on investment, which includes social return. So it's not just the return on investment for dollars, but how's it going to make the people better? How's it going to make quality of life better, for example? And to really, that intersectionality is woven in there. And so I found that really inspiring that this community has the same vision and the same understanding. And then you really need to try to bake that in every step you take. So for example, in the climate action process, we not only have the 3 transformational changes you'd expect, which are things like change how we move, change how we build and consume, change how we waste. We also have a 4th, which is change how we relate to each other. In our climate action plan, we had a paid justice and equity from members of the BIPOC community, from different abilities, review that plan and show us where we had unintended consequences of the work we were trying to do, baking it really closely together. And so some of the stuff you were talking about and the visions that came back really echoed that. So just to know that it's not outlandish to think that you're going to do that. And you know, as of Tuesday, fingers crossed, we will have had this approved, this vision that a low carbon future is an equitable, prosperous, resilient, low carbon community. So really inspiring to hear that your community understands it too, and really excited to see how you take that and move it forward. You're muted, Catherine. Yeah.
Yes, I am. So we actually have a few minutes, and I'm going to go back because I did cut off, and Barry Randall had a really great question. So Barry, do you remember your question, or if I read it out, would that be all right? Can you unmute yourself and let me know?
Go ahead, Catherine, read it out.
Okay. So Barry's question was, how much do you think provincial and federal political status, i.e. conservative/liberal, et cetera, influences the potential success of the social enterprise sustainability initiative?
I think it does certainly influence it. For example, the trajectory we were on with electric vehicles was much steeper before the current provincial government was elected, and they repealed some of the supports for the adoption of that technology. And so those things certainly shift it. What I would say though, is that for an organization like ours, because we're established, because we don't rely on government funding. This is one of the reasons we don't rely on government funding, is the government can change and we're okay. And we've built the community vision. It allows us to move forward locally. And you know, a lot of the direction for where we're supposed to go comes from the feds or the province, but the real work happens. The grassroots real transformation happens at a municipal level. And so, yes, they can say they change direction, the province, but if the municipality is committed and continues to move that way, they have the ability to do a lot of what they need to do. There are things that are hindered, but certainly it's possible. And the case I love to use is in the US when Trump was elected and he started to pull out of Paris and all of that kind of thing. Does anyone remember what happened?
Yeah.
I'm looking for the few. Yeah. The city started saying, I don't care that he's leaving. We're going to try to meet the Paris Accord. And for example, the city of New York now has mandatory energy reporting for any building over 25,000 square feet, which is not very big. And for any emissions over the cap that the city puts on, they pay $250 a ton. And there's thousands of dollars in penalties for not reporting. The city said, I don't care. This is where we need to go and we're going to do it. The City of London has it that if you even drive into the core, London, England, if you even drive into the core, you need to pay a fee to get into that core. And so like you can make this change. So yes, it matters. Yes, it makes it harder, but that doesn't mean that it'll stop you.
Okay, great. So Fred's group wanted a question as well, Tova, that's just popped up. So they'd be interested in hearing from you what didn't work out of, what did not work as a lesson learned? What?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, we tried something where we tried to add a fee for service into the regional sustainability initiative where like we thought organizations might hire us to do some deeper sustainability work and then we couldn't get the expertise and they weren't necessarily as committed. That doesn't work. We know that organizations that get programs like this for free don't engage. So they have to have skin in the game because if they're not willing to put even a small amount of money towards it, they don't value it enough to use it. We thought we could make Charge WR, the electric vehicle program, something that had some funding and we'd have staff for it. Nope, there wasn't enough need or demand for that. So there have certainly been things that have not gone as we thought, but typically we have done a lot of community consultation to get to that idea being implemented, that we've hopefully found things that were like, no, can't do that. And things like Charge, we just pivot. The other thing is, and I don't know if David will remember this, in the Evolve program, we had some funding to help do this. So we got a bit of money from Trillium, but there came a point where we had no dollars. We were winging and praying this. I was pulling money from one program to pay for the only staff person that was running the whole program. Everyone else had it as like a project, but this was the only person in the whole region who was focusing on this. And we just were like, you know what? It has to happen. We have to keep going. And I remember the moment when we found out Trillium came behind us and brought a fairly significant, the biggest Trillium award in Waterloo Region history came to this project to help us get it over the finish line. And it was like the biggest breath I think I've ever taken. But just that, like just push on, you can do it. It's hard, but it's okay.
Great.
Do we get a rent abatement?
That's the same question I ask.
So I'm going to ask, Julie's got one last question. This will be the last question, and then I'm going to be handing it off to Andrew to close out our session. So Julie, take it away.
Tova. So back in the early days, and like almost every municipality, especially over the span of the last 10 years, we have all been developing like crazy, like significant growth.
Yeah.
The municipalities are making and generating significant revenue from DC charges, right?
Yep.
So with that mindset here, regionally from, Wasaga to Clearview, we are all growing big numbers, especially even more so because of COVID. Development charges, land use, to some of these municipalities to change, to know that we can do this. And change the mindset that it's not always about making the money. It's the economic, social, and environmental vision of that balance. Can you shed some insights about that to where we are regionally?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's an ongoing challenge. I think one of the things we're seeing at the municipal level is we're seeing like some of the cities in our region are starting to think about how they must map against the UN SDGs. And, you know, you would think that it's going to be the big cities, but in fact, I was at the township of Wilmot Council on Monday night, and it was like this tiny little council of 5 people, and Wilmot is not a big township. And they were saying, we need to be putting the UN SDGs on every council report that comes to us, so we know whether we're working well or not, because, you know, moving one forward might be the detriment of another, just to keep them thinking about it. The other thing is, in development, it's really hard. I don't know how many people from municipalities, planning, elected officials, et cetera, are listening. But development and the ability to control development by a municipality is incredibly difficult. For those who are not in the municipal world, you might not know that municipalities cannot, by law, require a higher standard of sustainability, for example. If land is designated a certain kind of land, and we have this happening here, something that could, in theory, the zoning says it could be a gravel pit, as much as the municipality, the community doesn't want it, they have no right to say no. They can say no, and then it's going to go to the modern day version of the OMB, and it's going to be turned down. So the municipalities are in a terrible position in that kind of thing. What we have seen, though, is things like the Toronto Green Standard, where there's incentives, where you can say, if you build your building to X standard, you can have less parking, or your setbacks are a little bit less. Or if you do better insulation, will require less setbacks so that you're not losing square footage inside the building. Or in Waterloo Region, there's one municipality that says, if you join a TMA, a Transportation Management Association, you can reduce your parking, and so your building can be a little bit larger. And parking spots, if you've ever had to build a parking spot, as I said earlier, are very expensive to build, $30,000 or something per parking spot. It's crazy with all the infrastructure. Or if you put in electric vehicle charging infrastructure to get there, or all of these things. So there are ways to do this, and it is possible, but just an understanding that it is difficult to do. And then in terms of development standards, you do see some people saying, well, we'll waive certain development standard or development charges to be able to do these sustainability things. And what I've learned, one last note from working with the Canadian Green Building Council, is they actually recommend that developers be requested to give an energy model that, like, at site plan approval. Because if they have to show what their energy is going to be, then the building hasn't yet been designed. And so changes to the energy modeling can be done before it's designed, because as anyone who's ever built a building knows, changes after the design is done are incredibly expensive and nobody wants to do them. So like, there are some things you can do there. So engage with them too, they can help, and they've got some great best practices.
Thank you.
Andrew, over to you.
Sure. So yeah, I'd first like to, again, Tova, thank you very much for, deciding to share your insights with us. I think you provided a lot of inspiration and a lot of possibilities for us all to think about. Like, we know how busy you are with your time and all the work that you're doing in the region of Kitchener-Waterloo. So again, thank you for coming on and helping us out. And then also, just to give—
It's my pleasure.
Thanks. And to give everyone an idea on how deep SWR's volunteer network goes, and Tova, I don't know if you know this, but I was a co-op student back in 2009 with Mike when the organization was just getting off the ground. So
I have to say, sorry, can I pipe in just quick? I was
Sure.
looking through who's here and I missed someone. There's a gentleman on, I hope he's still here, named Nicholas Clowett. Are you still here, Nick? Oh, it looks like he's dropped off. Nick Clowett, who was a volunteer with us. Yes, he's here. I just saw his name. Nick volunteers with our Living Documents, helps us in the Regional Sustainability Initiative program. And if you're looking for someone who knows data and is like smart as a whip, Nick is the one who did our last re-inventory of the greenhouse gas emissions for the entirety of Waterloo Region. You have got a gold mine among you.
Wow.
Yeah. So sorry, Nick, I just outed you, but like amazing. Uh-oh.
Oh, he said, uh-oh.
We're on to you, Nick.
I like to say that the volunteers and the co-op students and the partners in Waterloo Region are like an army of sustainability angels that go out and make the world a better place.
Yeah. Yay.
And then as well, thanks again to the facilitators and the other Institute members who made this event possible. And as well, thank you to all the participants who registered and are currently attending and who have attended throughout the past hour and a half. As promised, we'll be following up with a a meeting to move forward on this discussion, I think, in early September. So please stay tuned for updates. And if you're not already registered on the Institute's email list, you can do that by, I believe, going to the website, which has been posted in the chat earlier today. And you can also on the website sign up for our newsletter that provides updates on upcoming events, upcoming speaker series, and kind of the direction that we're hoping to take this in after. I think I mentioned this at the start, but our next event in the series will be focused on attainable and affordable housing, and it will be held towards the end of October, but a date is still finalized for that. And then finally, we also rely on local support as we are a community organization supported by volunteers and local residents. So to continue offering our events, working groups, and programming, we humbly ask for your support. By registering as a member with the Institute, we're able to keep our programming free and available to everyone. And this would be potentially done through an annual membership, a fee of $100, which could help to advance our collective social, environmental, and economic impact. So that's it for me and all of us here. So thanks again for attending and have a great night.
Yep. Everybody, thank you.
Thanks for your time, everybody.
Yep.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you so much, Tova. That was just awesome.
No problem. Sorry I had to talk so fast, but there was so much I wanted to say.
I know, that's the problem. It's hard to get it all out. Okay, thank you again. Have a great evening and we'll be in touch.
No problem. Yeah, let me know how else I can help. Bye, Victoria.
Thank you.
Really, when I say we're a support organization, carbon doesn't start with parameters. We'd love to see South Georgian Bay do big stuff. So just like call me, email me, let me know what I can do.
Will do. Okay, thanks so much. Thank you, Victoria. You did an awesome job.
Perfect. Thanks, Catherine. Have a good night, everyone.
Yep. You
Bye.
too. Bye.